This is Mike Steckline, partner with the Institute for Enterprise Excellence. Short video today describing some topics we'll be discussing on our November 17th webinar. Information about the webinar you can see on this slide. Details can be found by going to that bit.ly link at the bottom. I'll show this slide again at the end. What we're going to be talking about on November 17th, we're going to begin the conversation looking at what we call the evolving worldview, change in the world metaphor, and moving from the industrial view of the world to what you might call a systemic view of the world. And the implications of that show up in the structures that we use to describe our organizations. Dr. Deming was one of the first people to talk about this that I'm aware of, and in the 1950s he introduced this view of the organization as a system in these conversations and lectures to leaders and engineers in Japan. So we'll be bringing that into the conversation. One of the people that worked very closely with Dr. Deming, Peter Scholtes, I met him when we lived in Madison, Wisconsin. Terrific individual. He's got a great story that he relates in his book, The Leader's Handbook, talking about train wrecks and the origin of the hierarchy view of management in history. So we're going to be talking a bit about that. So people will describe the current view of the organization, where they fit in the organization, typically in an organization chart, and building on some knowledge and information from Adrian Bijan and Peter Zane in a book, Design in Nature, and Dr. Bijan's work on what he calls a new law of physics, the constructal law of physics. The problem is not that structure, the problem is the orientation, and how can we move from a view of command and control to what I would call aligning and coaching. So we'll be talking about that. Another very valuable book that I find useful, Team of Teams, New Rules of Engagement for a Complex World by Stanley Mcchrystal, General Stanley Mcchrystal, describes the evolution of this view in the military, and we're going to be touching on a little bit of that. Another contribution, this is a terrific book, talking about the knowledge creating company, and the authors Nonaka and Takuchi describing what they call the SECI model for socialization, externalization, combination of internalization. So how do we build and transfer knowledge? The interesting thing here is they too turn that model on its side, again similar to the other models we'll be talking about, and how knowledge is built and shared throughout an organization. So we'll be touching upon that. Another contribution is Simon Sinek. He's got a terrific TED Talks video. You can go to that link, the bit.ly link there, and view his TED Talks video where he talks about the golden circle. And in his book, Start With Why, he translates that into another structure, again turning it on its side, the role of leaders, the role of managers, and the role of frontline to serve the customer, and who plays what role in an organization. So what we've done is described a better view of the organization, people working side by side, thinking about the titles of leaders, managers, frontline in view of serving the customers, and translating that into a figure that would describe, in the ideal state, where would people be spending their time and focus. We discussed this in a little bit of detail in a recent webinar, and also in our white paper, soon to be published, on the Pracademics Guide to Strategy Deployment. So I hope you'll be able to join us on November 17th. Again, the details for the dial-up and login information you can find at that bit.ly link below. Thanks for your time.